What the hell, Kim? Here I am in Illinois, and they've got legal cannabis. If I buy weed on this side of the bridge, I'm buying it from a crook. If I buy weed on that side of the bridge, I'm buying it from a reputable business person. Our laws in Iowa put people into rape cages because they smoke marijuana. How about Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, George Bush, his friend Bill Clinton? Joe Rogan used some too, I heard. It's not a gateway to anything other than illegality. So when's the drug war going to end in Iowa, Kim? Easy answer, the day I'm governor. I'm Rick Stewart, and I approve this message.
Guys, I want to start the episode out by talking about, by far, possibly my favorite company of all time. A company that I am actually employed for. Guerrilla Graphics Design Agency. The team at Guerrilla Graphics is fucking phenomenal. We always have shit going. We always have projects that, and closely collaborating with people, trying to get their vision going. We can provide you with top tier effects and production value. We have everything you can ask for, including equipment and a stellar end product from top to bottom. Head over to GuerrillaGraphics.com for all of your design needs today. Trying to find your next spot for a show or event? Look no further, because Stutterbox Productions is here to help. If you're looking for a solid team of people to get you started with your next performance or event, this is the company to contact. So what are you waiting for? Head over to Stutterbox Productions' Facebook page for all of your needs today. Hey everybody, this is McAllister's Podcast. I'm your host as always, Cole McAllister. We're joined today by Marco Battaglia. How you doing today, man?
Doing well.
Returning guest on the episode.
Oh yeah, it's nice to be back at the headquarters.
The headquarters. the illustrious headquarters.
Oh yeah.
The mysterious things we have going on.
I like the artwork. I always enjoy walking through.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, a lot of it is, LSD inspired. I do have done a lot of acrylic painting, so that's kind of my thing. Like I said, returning guest, you are Lieutenant Governor, running under the Libertarian Party, along with your running mate Rick Stewart. You guys, I was saying before, I love Rick's ad for marijuana. I love what you guys are doing, really, and you guys have a real grassroots approach. You've been really going around actually talking to the people, something that I doubt Kim Reynolds is actually doing.
So I've learned a lot in the last couple decades, really, but especially since being in the gubernatorial primary last cycle, running against Attorney General Tom Miller last cycle, and then being part of this process, because Rick was actually the first one to get nominated. So his campaign slogan is the first choice for Iowa governor, but that was just really because he was, the first person that threw his hat in the ring and was out there. We were going to parades this time last year.
Yeah.
And meeting people and hearing them out. And that was kind of actually how we formed our, the platform of issues that that he has on his website. And, he's been, so prior to this, he had rode his bike through all 99 counties.
I saw you post about that today.
And then he has had probably closer to 100, but easily over 50 events where he's been, just mixing it up with people from different parts of Iowa. He's been really available to the press. And I think it's actually probably the first time that someone that's a sitting governor has just not responded to various media outlets. There's been minimal polling, only a couple. There's been only one debate, and the one she agreed to is one that has actual stipulations saying, you basically have to be a Democrat or a Republican to participate. So it was
of course,
safe to know she wouldn't have to be on the stage with someone that's not your classic, you already know if there's a Democrat and a Republican debating, most of Iowa knows which one they're going to root for before the debate happens. It's like that. Unless you're independent, which is a large part of the population, you're not really learning, more so as rooting. Stick it to other person or whatever.
Yeah,
Martin Hurry
exactly.
stick it to the president, because she's mainly been campaigning against Biden and not really mentioned her opponents very often. So
Yeah, well, I just cannot stand Kim Reynolds. I really cannot. Like, I've always had a distaste for Kim Reynolds. I know Rick was just on here, like, he kind of has a spiel about, like, how he doesn't want to talk, too badly about his candidates, and I understand that.
I think I'm generally honest to a fault, and I have made what I would call friends with people that are in the Iowa legislature, and some elected that are active, some that are former legislature, some that are appointed to positions. And there's really been actually a surprising number of people that I felt were like, hey, this is a good person doing it for the right reasons. And I've honestly never got that vibe from her or Adam Gregg. Like, it just seems like so many photo opportunities, so much just ass kissing, pandering.
Yeah.
We back the blue, we support our troops, but not like, just an empty meme, platitude. Not like, what are you actually doing to live by that? And also, it's something that's really happened, pretty much in the COVID response. It's like the GOP just kind of gets a pass to be like, oh, we were the Freedom Party.
Oh,
and like,
yeah.
no, you were governor during this time. And, my family was hurting, and we had a business that went under during that time. Well, to me, it's a clear case of, wealthy donors got preferential treatment. Like Tyson, they're staying open, Walmart's staying open. But, local businesses, venues, bars really got the shaft and had a hard time. And this was when, when you had GOP leadership in Iowa, you had this governor in Iowa. So, before you were against it, you signed a mask mandate. Before, your lieutenant governor was on his social media, praising vaccinations, before you started being a defender of the freedom to choose. So to me, it's like just not the place of a government official to really, like, what you're really doing is, advertising for a product. And like, it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't look at that way. Like, people that 10 years ago, 5 years ago would have been like, oh, skeptical of these big pharmaceutical companies, like, then they all of a sudden jumped and became they're
bowing,
giving them
them
free advertising for their product. And to me, it's not even taking, like, what if you want to put hundreds of different things in your body, that's fine, it's yours, and go for it, whether it's an illicit substance or a touted vaccination. Like, I'm not gonna I'll give you my honest opinion if you ask, but I'm not your doctor. I'm not gonna suggest do this or do that. Like, it's just, to me, that's not it wouldn't be my place to suggest people try psilocybin therapy as a profession, as a government official. Like, I'll say, like, you should maybe talk to your doctor about this and consider it. I think it's safe and it's helping a lot of people, but I'm not going to try to be, an authority on it, per se. I just want people to have the freedom to try it.
I will say the sad thing about living in Iowa is if you tell your doctor you want to take psilocybin, they'll probably be like, yo.
Cannabis, if you're honest about using cannabis, let alone any other drug. I mean, there's a reason why methamphetamine is a Schedule II, because there is some therapeutic benefit. And
I take Adderall.
It gets a bad fucking rap, but pretty much every substance that is illicit has some kind of purpose that is helpful to people. And I really love this guy named Dr. Carl Hart, who I think we brought him up last time, but drug use for grown-ups, like, if you're a responsible grown-up and you're using any substance known to man, and it has some kind of net benefit in your life, and you're not, like, becoming, irresponsible or a letdown or a danger or something, then like,
if it's not negatively
that's
affecting
just basic liberty, is you should be able to enjoy it and pursue happiness. And what do these people that are still drug warriors in 2022, like, is it a fucking joke? Like, you don't know all the side effects of a pharmaceutical or of alcohol. No. Like, I'm fine with people. I'm fine with people imbibing, but at least understand, if I have way too many of this, it's doing a lot of harmful shit to my body. Sure. Like, that's basic personal responsibility.
Yeah. Well, and this episode, Rick, will come out after this, what we're talking. But I was talking with Rick, and we were talking about heroin. And, the withdrawal from heroin is less severe than the withdrawal from alcohol. Like, undoubtedly. Not even comparable.
Somebody, I think it was a pro wrestler, had a son that passed away, like, trying to quit cold turkey from drinking. Who was it now? I can't remember. He came out and talked about it, but now I don't want to say because I can't remember exactly. I think I know who it was, but I think it was Kevin Nash, but I can't remember for sure. I was just reading about him announcing his son's passing, and then he explained, like, don't underestimate, alcohol, because when you're a heavy drinker and you just stop, like, that's another big traumatic event for your body.
Yeah, and that's what, like, for me personally, that's why I've always, like, stuck towards, like, cannabis. Like, it's not one of those drugs that, like, you're gonna get that same, like, if I quit using cannabis for a week, I'm not gonna, like, be shivering and throwing up and
same
close to death.
Most psychedelics, even more so. Like, most people, I'm sure there's outliers, but most people don't want to, like, just go right back. Like, usually there's like this time in between where you kind of, it's almost like they're made up to be used medicinally and not so much recreationally. Like, we call it recreational use, but just because you're not, with a therapist or with some kind of medical professional in a room, so outside, so I'm actually worried about that. Like, if we go too hard on clinical therapy, are they just gonna corner them as like a pharmaceutical, like, drug, instead of just like, they grow all over the world in our freaking backyards, and that should be allowed too, like, to have that stuff at home. And actually, it takes way more work to, grow a good cannabis crop or to grow psilocybin than most people think. So, like, most people are gonna want to, like, buy it at a store. Like, the average person, I don't think is gonna do the work. It'd be cool, actually, if they did. I think maybe profound for our society if people actually, like, grew stuff, like their own medicine and their own food. But it takes work and, at least some amount of money, capital to start out. So it's like there's a time investment, and there's the work, and then there's actually some skill and some knowledge that goes into it. You can't just, like, throw a seed or a spore into whatever and it just happens magically.
Yeah. Well, when I took it, I haven't taken LSD in probably a couple of years, but every time I took it, like, the last thing I wanted to do was just like, hey, let's do that again. It's a 10 to 12 hour experience. Like, you have to prepare an entire weekend for it, essentially, because the next day or two you're gonna be, like, shot, because you're just exerting yourself both physically, excuse me, and emotionally, and it's like it is. They call it a trip because it literally is a trip.
Yeah.
It's like taking like
a longer lasting psychedelic for sure, but I would say even the shortest lasting are still, like, such a profound experience that there'll probably be those handful of people that, like, do have some way to have it affect them negatively and use it far too often, but I think for most people, you're just not going to want.
I agree.
You're going to respect it once you've experienced it.
Yeah.
To some degree.
I mean, if anything, compared to alcohol, there's no question. Like people who drink alcohol, they are continuous. Like people who drink alcohol wake up and they start drinking. Nobody has a trip and then wakes up, 4 hours later and is like, oh.
And honestly, if someone could function doing that,
then yeah, fine.
It's probably less harmful.
Yeah. Well, they have there was a guy who did a video where he recorded himself doing simple things both on LSD and alcohol, and he was way more functioning every time on the LSD.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of it is psychological, or fear of what's going to happen if you've never done it before. So
yeah,
but once you have kind of control over your body and understand what's happening to your mind, either from experience or from study of what actually does happen, yeah, I could see that becoming way more kind of in control and kind of just making it a really positive experience. Set and setting is what they always talk about. And
yeah,
everything is so important. Your dose, your set, your setting. Just, it's not something you just can just go into after a chaotic day, no plans, you got a bunch of shit you got to do, and then it's
you're not Hunter S. Thompson,
Yeah, unless you're unless you are, unless you're doing all that, and it'll probably wind up similar.
Yeah, that motherfucker took acid every day.
Yeah,
he would take acid and he would just write. That was his.
I couldn't imagine, wanting to.
Exactly.
But yeah, so one thing that I really think has gotten missed, or, even your Grassleys and your Kim Reynolds, pay it lip service, but they don't really get into the nitty gritty, is the fentanyl situation. And I have gotten to the point where I've talked to enough people that have had experiences. I've talked to doctors and first responders, and even just now, if you're a mall cop, you experience overdose and you carry Narcan. I've talked to the security at Jordan Creek Mall, and they have a lot of overdoses. They've administered Narcan, and it's either shoplifting, teenage fight club, or an overdose, and that's their daily cycle through.
Yeah, we had a guest on recently who I hadn't researched this, but apparently in Des Moines a person died from touching a door handle that had fentanyl in it.
I would have to see the
I would
coroner
too. I would
report,
too,
because I'm not. You can't just die
you don't think
from
so?
Touching fentanyl.
I have heard that.
Maybe if you rubbed it in your eye or sucked your finger or something. But
so, see, and this is the thing. This is not a
it doesn't
scholarly
absorb through
podcast.
Your skin. There's a lot of fear mongering and a lot of myth, the cop just touched it and just fucking.
You don't buy it?
No,
okay. No, I mean, no. And like I said, I haven't looked into it. I didn't research it.
Fentanyl is a very therapeutic thing, and for people that have chronic pain, I've talked to a man that got electrocuted horribly, and is just in constant fucking the worst pain you can imagine, and fentanyl is what gets him to kind of be able to live a normal life.
Yeah.
So I mean, it has its place. I don't think it shouldn't be demonized, but what you need to know is, we need drug testing, and we need safe supply.
Yeah.
We need to know what dose of so, you can go on Snapchat or anything probably and buy pills, and there's a good chance that it's fentanyl, no matter what they say the pill is.
Exactly.
And that's what's fucked up. But there's a way we can fight that, and that's to have it be common to have drug safety testing, common to have a safe supply.
Yeah.
We are being poisoned, and this shit is just being shipped in here constantly, but it just gets so... half of these people want to be well, it's illegal, it's bringing it across the border. The other half wants to be well, they're making it in China. Well, you're defeating, you're not really getting to the point that if we want to save people's lives, we know how. We know to make drug testing common and easy, and have a safe supply of it, so
Yeah.
people aren't going and, you know, picking an emoji and saying, I want, you know, hydro, and then it's just fentanyl that they get, or whatever the fuck, you know, like
Yeah.
some kids not buying something that they think will help them sleep, and then it's just fucking fentanyl and any of that.
Yeah. Well, that's what's really great about EDM festivals. There's a lot of those.
Drug safety is
Yep.
becoming a lot more common, and there's a great group called Dance Safe that I love. Like they're constantly pumping out fentanyl test strips and just making sure that people that go to those sorts of events have the safest and best time possible.
Yeah, I wish drug testing was more common. Even buying acid, I had times where I was like, should I get that kit? You know, like that's why I don't buy it now.
What I say I'm talking to some basic, you know, small town Iowan that has not really thought about that beyond, like, you know, drugs are bad. Just say no, like Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Marijuana is the most dangerous drug known to man.
Dude, fuck Reagan.
Yeah, I mean, while selling cocaine from Contras. I'm glad we're finally at a point where, like, most people under 40 can be like, yeah, that was not like the we shouldn't put this guy on a pedestal.
You know what's crazy? Donald Trump stole his slogan, or his slogan.
America Great. There's a pin that I've seen that has H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan, make America great again. Like, bruh,
It's not even original.
you're not even original. They wouldn't even give you nothing besides a cameo in Home Alone 2, bro.
Did they edit him out of that yet? I know that
there was talk about it.
They were trying to.
There was talk about it.
What do you think about? Do you think Trump has a solid chance, realistically, for the presidential?
I didn't think he did the first time. Like, at first I was like, well, I'll see what he has to say, and then he came here in Iowa, like, right out the gates, like, oh, they're not sending their best and they're bringing drugs. And I was like, fuck. I got it that he was wanting to win and just saying what he thought he needed to say. But if you watched him in an interview any time before he announced he was running for president as a Republican, he never said shit like that.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Like, nothing remotely right wing came out of his mouth.
He was a
his
Wall
whole
Street
life.
guy.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, that somehow you get rural Iowans to, like, support a New York building management and Wall Street type dude.
Yeah.
Like, how did that fucking happen? I don't know. Like, I just think about, like, you know, in the 80s or 90s, if you'd be like, all right, your politicians are going to be Donald Trump, Dr. Oz, and Herschel Walker. Like, dude, as a Vikings fan, like, so, you know, I was born in 85, but I don't know if you're familiar with Herschel Walker.
No.
So he was a football player, and there was a trade that happened that was, like, crushing to the Vikings, and it was basically involved Herschel Walker. So it's like, fuck, like, this fucking guy still out here fucking, I don't know. But yeah, like, the fact that Dr. Oz too, what the fuck?
So what, they ran for president? Is that...
They run for different positions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just the fact that, like, yeah,
they're seen as viable politicians because they're running as Republican.
Yeah. No, I mean, Trump is crazy, man. It truly is removed. You know what?
It is like a cult. I mean, there's no other way to look at it.
For real. Like those paintings of Trump and Jesus, those get me every time. I can't help myself.
Autographing Bibles, like, what the fuck? How did we get here?
Have you seen the video of him? He's in a Catholic church service, and like this like group of priests is like walking through the middle aisle, and he like acknowledges all of them, and then a black priest walks by, and he just like looks away, and then he goes right back to the
I
white
don't even
one.
think, and I didn't like Biden when Obama picked him to be his running mate.
Oh, Biden's awful.
This dude was awful, and he was like the antithesis of what the current average Democrat voter would vote for. Like, if you look at what he actually did when he was in office, like, you might as well be a Republican. Like, if you just look on like voting history.
Yeah, right.
So it's
in this day and age, he would be for sure. Like, how is his positions in the 70s and 80s? Like, yeah, he would definitely be that.
Yeah, no, that's a whole wacky world. And I was hoping, I think one day people will be over that shit, but we'll have to find out, I guess, here in a couple weeks if Iowa is even close to being over it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think Biden's going to make it to the end?
I don't know. I didn't know if Trump would. I didn't know, I didn't know, if either of them would survive, a bout with COVID.
Yeah, they're both old as fuck.
Either of them would survive, walking up steps. Like, I have no problem with older people at all. But I'm getting to my upper 30s, and I'm starting to feel it. Like, it's important to take care of yourself, and I wouldn't think of Biden and Trump as people that really took that good care of themselves with their diet and regimen. And like Rick, my running mate, he's getting up there, and he's power walking through these parades. He's bicycling around the state. Like,
how old is he? He's 70, right?
Yeah,
he
in
looks
his 70s.
Fucking great for 70.
Yeah, and he's sharp. Like, his mental acuity is present. Like, he can, put a few words together without just being like, "What the fuck is this guy talking about?" Like, it's not an ageist thing. It's like these particular senior citizens are not with it, I don't think, enough to have like a really important position in society.
Yeah, no. Well, and that's kind of like the thing when people, it's funny to watch people like get on the Biden and Trump train and like attack each other's candidates for like mental. It's like, you guys,
so many things are the same, and
exactly,
and being weird around women and kids and shit, and just being whatever criticism you got, having problematic family, like, they both fit the fucking bill. And just the hypocrisy of like picking one of them out and being like, well, the other thing, a point that I thought got made that was good is like, there was like this call of like Joe Biden and his son, and just, he was being like very loving and forgiving of his, compassionate about his drug problems. And, I thought, if anything, that won me some points of respect back towards Biden. Like, I don't think that's something we really need to like drag through the fucking mud of like being compassionate about someone that's clearly struggling with substance abuse. But still, the fact that if you want to point out one of them having, problematic children that they've fathered, it would only be fair, I think, to open up the court to both of them.
At least open up the discussion, right?
Yeah.
Like
this whole thing of like, if you are, I don't know, if you're supportive of only Republicans or supportive of only Democrats, like, how do you not see the hypocrisy of just, railing and pointing fingers at the other side and never criticizing your own team? Like,
yeah.
To me, if anything, I think libertarians are too good at criticizing their own.
Right.
Like,
right.
Everybody's out there. They're just waiting for you to say something and call you out. And like, Like, if anything,
Very
we're
true.
too good at that.
Right. But I think that's a good quality. Like,
I think
for
for
sure.
the most part, yeah, I would rather have that. And I think I've learned a lot from having, people that have been a part of the movement for a lot longer than I've been alive. Like, I love that when they call me or text me or message me and just say, hey, have you thought this way about this? Or, whoa, you were way off the fucking mark there from my perspective. And it's like, I would rather listen and learn.
Yeah. I think that cultivates a good, societal stepping stone, like a good blueprint for like people to just interact. Like, I think it's positive to have like friends and family members who are like able to call you out on bullshit. You need people to keep you in line, and that's the problem with both Democrats and Republicans is like nobody's willing to keep each other in line. They're in that tunnel, they're in that passageway, and they're just going forward, and they're not gonna, they're willing to overlook that. I think when it comes,
my mom's from Italy and came here, through Ellis Island when she was a toddler.
Oh, wow.
And there's an old Italian saying like you should tell a friend when their face is dirty, that sort of thing. Like to me, that I don't get upset. I like would rather have a circle that's like that than just ass kissers and echo chamber and good lord, man. So
yeah, for sure.
So Kanye West, like, what the fuck is going on?
I wanted to ask you about that, dude. Have you seen the?
I gotta be honest, I never understood Kanye West. Like, I know there's people that are like, this album or that album or like early Kanye or peak Kanye. Like, I tried and I just didn't get it.
Yeah.
So I never like put him on whatever pedestal he got on to even like think he was someone to like worry about what the fuck he had to say about anything, or is he going to launch like a groundbreaking next record? I just never thought, I was never on that level. Or like, he's going to design like the most amazing sneaker that like the world has ever seen. Like,
I think his fashion
I've never
shit's
understood
overrated.
that, bro.
Yeah.
I've never. The one time I remember really respecting like a sneaker, when I played basketball like in middle school and a little bit in high school, and Hakeem Olajuwon made like, I think it was, I can't remember what brand it was, but he made a sneaker that intentionally had a low price point because he was like saddened that kids were like stealing other kids' shoes and that like theft was happening and like murders were happening over like new fucking Jordans or whatever.
Oh, wow.
So like, honestly, that was like, I respected the hell out of that. Like, it was a sneaker that was supposed to be, a certain quality, but a certain low price. So that to kind of like change that trend, move away from that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. So fucking dream.
That's a great example of like the charity of capitalism.
Yeah, it does happen. And, Dr. Bronner's is one of my favorite companies, and they like to use the term constructive capitalism. And I haven't fact-checked it yet, but I know the other day I saw what I thought was a quote from Bono from like U2.
Yeah.
And he said something, to paraphrase, like, at one point I thought, like taking wealth from someone and redistributing it was like the way to have a better world, a better planet. And now I know that it's like compassionate competition, that is a much better way. And I need to like go and see if he really said that, because you never know these days. But I hope he did, because that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But, going back to Kanye, like, yeah, it really, yeah. Did you watch his Lex interview?
I honestly
haven't watched it.
I've never really like given him that much of my time. I just know he was trending for anti-Semitism, which, I I don't know what he actually said even.
Oh, well, he basically just said that the Jews are controlling the media. He talked about the Jewish mafia. He said he was going to go DEFCON on the Jews. There was an interview with a podcaster named Lex Freeman where he got pressed about everything with the Jews, and like the entire interview, he was like referring to him like you. He was like, you guys. He was like, oh, because I'm Jewish. Like, even though this tiny podcast, there's nothing to do with this like media empire that happens to be have a lot of Jewish people.
Everybody just knows each other, and like
that whole
like yo, I just got a pass because I'm part of this either religion or this people. Yeah.
It was just a very ignorant, and it's kind of interesting because like there's always been this kind of narrative that like black people can't be racist, and Kanye killed that. Nobody can say that anymore because this motherfucker just went AWOL on the Jews for like 2.5 hours straight.
It's a tough landscape, especially in politics, because there is a huge lobby that exists to like pump money towards Israel and to make Israel look good in its government decisions and in its military activity. Mm-hmm. And there has been people that have challenged that get labeled anti-Semite because, kind of like here, if you were in opposition to going to Iraq or Afghanistan after 9/11, you got called un-American or anti-American. So like basically if you're not hardcore nationalist for this specific country, you're anti-America, or you're pro-Russian if you don't think we should be sending like weapons to Ukraine. It's like I don't care for Putin. There's a lot of things wrong with that, and I think I've heard that it's horrible to be like someone that's non-religious or that's not a cis heterosexual in Russia. So like that's not
well,
cool.
in Ukraine too.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like Ukraine gets painted as like this, like, oh, they're great, and they really are.
When
not.
There is weird things at play, geopolitics and a broader, military structure, but entangling alliances, then like all that goes out the window of like right and wrong, and like I've become so like anti-force and anti-war that I just don't think it's the answer to arm anyone anywhere. I think people everywhere should have the ability to defend themselves as they see fit, but let's not spend other people's money to put more weapons out into the world.
Yeah, a government initiative for that is the problem, for sure.
Yeah, and there's, a number of countries that are a lot closer to this. Like, are we really saying that they just have no ability to decide, like, is this right or this wrong, and we want to pitch in and help? Like, it's just, it's a tough thing, especially when, one or two of the largest political parties wants to control the kind of, I call it propaganda, but, control the narrative of what's going on somewhere else in the world, whether it's the Middle East or Russia or China, anywhere really.
Yeah, well, and, that's kind of like the argument for like, anarcho-capitalism that like I can really see is like, if you dismantle those government apparatuses and you really just have a free open market where people are able to like decide, oh, hey, if this person is in power, I can choose not to buy their product, and that will affect them. I do think it's not necessarily as black and white as
it's complicated, but I think
it's a good thing to shoot for.
I think
I will say that 100%.
The closer you have to free trade, the closer you have to like a place where boycott is effective.
Yeah.
And, I definitely don't think we should be making laws saying you can't boycott. Like, that's another thing with Israel in particular. Like, there's states that actually have government legislation that's saying, like, oh, you can't boycott, companies that are from, a certain country. And that's just really bizarre to me that, you know, people are that, I don't know, bought and paid for. But I've experienced that firsthand from everywhere from city council to, you know, statewide office to working for national politicians. Like, you know, I think at the end of the day, if you're getting donations that amount to more than most people make in a year, you're something is wrong. Like, people want something in return from you. Sure. They're either knowing you're gonna do what they want you to do, or they're gonna really expect you to do what they expect you to do. If they're like donating, you know, even 10K, I would say is pretty absurd to just dole out to somebody. Like, that's why I really respect the hell out of Rick, and I think it's pretty funny if like a Democrat or Republican or just liberal or conservative, whatever, you know, it's like, oh, you only raised, you know, tens of thousands of dollars, 50K, 60K, whatever. To me, during the economy that we've had, everything that's been going on, the inflation, it's like that is pretty fucking good to have, you know, small donations from the average hardworking citizen. Especially
when you consider like a skewed media landscape where like libertarians are just, their voices just diminished naturally.
To me, he's he's pretty much fucking proved that there is you know, a lack of framing it as a three-way race, which it truly is. Like we've tried to make it so hard for them to frame it that way because, you know, he's had more campaign events. He's had more transparency to the press and more open to the public and put more hours in, you know, shaking hands. And then I've done the opposite because of like my schedule with, you know, being a correctional officer.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a lot.
I've pretty much made sure we have a presence on like every social media platform that I've ever found someone from Iowa using. I've made a presence there, and we actually kind of opened channels through all of them and took questions for like an Ask Me Anything that we did a few weeks ago. So we did like a multi-platform AMA. So like, we took questions from Reddit, from everything, like Minds, from MeWe or Mew, however you say that, from Truth Social, from, you know, pretty much everything, Discord, Reddit, like everything that that you've probably heard of. We were engaging people and taking questions from, and he was answering them on a live stream that went out. The live stream you could actually see on just YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, but the questions were coming from all these different platforms. So I thought that was really cool, and I hope people do emulate that.
Yeah, you never see Kim Reynolds do that.
No, you never see her do an event that is not controlled. Like, you know who's going to ask the questions. You know they're going to be like softball.
Yep.
You know something's not going to like go off the rails. And like, to me, that's a big part of having an important position is something's going to, you know, like what I've learned being a correctional officer, like you always kind of got to have awareness, and nothing is just going to be like nice and perfect like what they put in commercials, like, oh, I'm just shaking everybody's hand and they're wearing my t-shirt. And, you know, even if like I play music, and even if you're a band, there's going to be nights where you're opening for, you know, we at one time opened for Megadeth, and, you know, there's people there that really want to see fucking Megadeth, so they're not going to be like super friendly to you. So it's like the real world doesn't work like your political advertisements. Like everyone's smiling and like, yeah, you're the fucking best person ever. Like, let's give you all the power over my life, and I just entrust you with keeping everybody free and safe, and you're so cool.
Yeah.
It's not like that.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it is kind of and this is kind of, you know, I won't lie to you, this is something I kind of struggle with, like being libertarian. And, you know, I'm not an anarchist. Like, I don't fully, I do like a lot of anarcho points, but I don't fully subscribe to the ideology. But it is something that I struggle with. Like I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Malice.
To a certain degree, yeah.
He's a pretty semi-popular anarchist libertarian. But he wrote a book and he kind of talked about how in the New Right, he talked about how, people, usually want to be safe rather than free. Is that something that you think might be, something that could barricade that anarcho society?
It's a challenge, but I think a lot of it is bullshit. Like, they think that because we have laws, that makes us safe. And to me, you're going to have if you really want less what you call criminal activity, less crime, less violence, like it's going to take like a society, like a paradigm shift. Like, it's not going to be like, oh, here's another law 100,057 and that's going to keep us safe. Like, oh, now we have, after 9/11, now we have a TSA and an ICE and now we got a cool fucking tank to like come in and fucking bulldoze somebody's house and move a homeless camp from one part of the city to another.
Yeah.
Like fucking They Live out here in Des Moines. Have you ever seen that movie, They Live?
No. But
yeah, fuck. It's like, what do you you're just moving around people. Or like even when someone comes through the system and they get incarcerated and they go to prison, I've seen people that we release and then they're, on the corner in Des Moines asking for money. Like, it's just this vicious cycle of like, what do you think's gonna happen if you just keep moving people from one place to the other without addressing the problems? Like, same with like moving a homeless camp, just like without having some other hand up for these people.
Yeah, they just did that in Des Moines.
Yeah, they constantly do it. And there's a literal budget for this. Like, you're just wasting people's money doing horrible shit to people. And, it always seems to be like right before like cold weather and winter too.
Yeah.
Like, where do you expect? It's not like a shelter is the answer to everything, because A, you pretty much don't get to have your property, B, if you have like a dog or a pet, you don't get to keep that. If you, I don't think it's right to say like, oh, you got to be cold turkey off whatever drugs or drink you're using to get as a requirement of being like helped and safe and warm and shit. So there's just so much wrong that I truly feel like there's evidence to support, loads of evidence to support this, that like housing first principles coupled with harm reduction, and I really like the clubhouse model of mental health care and kind of using that idea for addiction rehabilitation, like community-based services, where I think, you could have tripartisan agreement. Because I like to think of it as like you're lending someone your hand and you're helping them grow economically. You're not just like, here's a hand out and just good luck and we'll keep throwing money at the problem whether it gets better or not. Like, this is evidence-based, that when you use these models, and especially in cities the size of cities that Iowa have, like, it seems there's mountain of evidence to support we could actually do a lot of good for people and actually save money and lower taxes by doing the right thing. This is like one area where you could actually please all sides if they would just kind of look beyond a little bit further than like tomorrow. Like, oh shit, there's these homeless people near our business and we just want them gone. And like, where do you think they're going to fucking go? Like, they're going to just move to a different part of the city or move to a different city, or go to, jail or prison, only to come back out and be homeless. It's not like you're suddenly in a lot better place when they kick you out the door than you were when you went in. Like, you're your lot doesn't grow. You might like learn things and hopefully learn skills and get clean to some degree, but that's not like a dramatic improvement from where you were before. So yeah, that's one where it's like, yeah, I could totally side with the Democrat Party or liberals if they were like leading the charge on an evidence-based way to help the houseless population. Like, yes, let's fucking do it. Same with like ending the drug war. Let's fucking do it. Making it easier to move around the planet. Let's fucking do it. But shit just gets lost in this like political football of like,
yeah. Well,
and that's why I don't think libertarianism is not like right wing or left wing. Like if you think about enough issues, like it's an entirely different bird. Like you got the right wing and the left wing. We're a different fucking species.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very much, it's more about like the logistical, like you have the right to do what you need to do versus like we're, like removing yourself and not being like, okay, because you're part of our party, you have to align to these ideologies.
Yeah. And
it's not that at all.
I personally think anarchy is beautiful and that it is a path to nonviolence and lack of coercion and, much less government. But I'm also like, you have to go from point A to where you're going. I'm realistic in that sense. Like, I can't just pick up my family and go really anywhere on the planet and be like off the grid magically. Like, you're going to be part of a community somewhere else that has their own government that's very far removed from individual liberty and personal responsibility. I think the difference here is that we still have these documents that we put, on display that claim to protect liberties. But if our politicians aren't defending them and our people aren't speaking up about them, then they're just that, pieces of paper. And before they existed, I feel like we had these rights and, maybe some things. They started to use these documents to actually limit the rights that people have. So I see that, and I agree with that sentiment. But there's this great book actually, it's called "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress," and it's kind of talks about like a revolution, and then you get to set up your new government, and then everyone wants to be like, well, people shouldn't do this or people shouldn't do that. And then every time you're like making it more complicated, like, oh, we want to make sure we have freedom and liberty, but how many things do we have to say like people are free to do, really? And that's the thing, like the beauty of the Bill of Rights is like basically everything. You're basically free to do everything except for a few very specific things. Like, and one is fucking don't use eminent domain for private companies' gain, and that's an issue still today in Iowa. And same to me, growing a marijuana plant and using it as medicine is a very basic medical freedom. And so when we have an incumbent governor, no matter what party they're from, that doesn't respect the most basic of property rights, doesn't respect the most basic of medical and agricultural freedoms, like that's a huge problem. And for the longest time, that's been, whether it was a Democrat or a Republican, they both fit the bill.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's such an infuriating aspect of Kim Reynolds. It's like she wasn't even elected into her initial position. I mean, Terry Branstad got picked by Trump to be the commissioner to China.
I do worry that our politicians, like, that'll be a trend for, both of the larger parties. Like,
agreed.
Instead of letting two new people duke it out in an election and, all the problematic things that entails, let's make it even more problematic by just stepping down and handing, the role to somebody else. So now they're the incumbent and they have that advantage.
Yeah.
And they have hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to, make sure there's an advertisement in every commercial break. I think that's another challenge to, when you talk about roadblocks, is like the older people.
You want another beer?
Sure. Right. The older people vote the most often and the hardest, and they're also the ones that watch the most, like your local news, your regular commercials. Like there's some people that that stream and skip the commercials and whatever as best as they can, but I think like the older the age you are, the less that you do that, it seems like to me. So if they just are getting the news from their local TV channel and their local paper, and that local paper doesn't mention that there's a third person on the ballot, like that's a huge problem. Yeah. You're not even learning till you actually show up to vote that's even, that there's a competition.
Exactly. Well, it's beauty of the internet too, though, is that I feel like, people like my age and younger, like, there's a huge rise in libertarianism among young people. I think the internet has a huge part.
And then those are the people that don't vote the most, which I understand. I understand if that is like your principled stand, is that you don't vote because you don't believe in it or because it's corrupted. Like, that's cool. I respect that, and I've actually been there.
I was going to say,
that's you just don't vote because you're apathetic and you're like, I want to complain about everything and be offended by everything, but I don't want to like take part in, changing things. Then that's a problem. Like, but if you're like, like this is a principled stand that you're taking, I can support that, honestly. But
yeah, definitely. Speaking of anarchy, I have I want to play devil's advocate with you just really quick, and I want to ask. So let's say tomorrow that we, had an anarchist society. There are these corporations that have, an immense amount of power, and I think a lot of people, misconstrue, business with like.
I think they misconstrue how this power is amassed.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
much of it is through being in bed with the government.
Exactly. But so let me ask you this though. So we have these corporations that are that big. If we had an anarchist society with these corporations, don't you think that is it possible that they have too much power and that libertarian anarcho society is not the answer to that?
I think it's entirely possible, but I think we've never really given it, we've never had a scientific test.
Yeah.
So I find it really hard to imagine it being like this hellscape that is somehow worse. But if it was, then I imagine people would be like, well, we need to start a government and we need to get this shit under control. Like, I guess I don't have a fear of that.
Okay.
And anyone that does, I don't think it's based on reality because you haven't had that experience. Like, I think the Iowa Constitution is actually a pretty liberty-friendly document, and I think to a certain degree the Constitution and the Bill of Rights are too. So a lot more so than what a lot of other places in the world have in place in terms of government. So at least we like still have it in our history books and pay lip service to it. Whether or not our politicians understand it or care about it, that's another story. Or our people are standing up for their rights. And I think they more and more people are, but because, it seemed like when I was a kid, it was very much like you just respect authority every turn. Like, yeah. And I think a lot of people have woken up to, you respect people that deserve respect, that earn respect. And like, hell yeah, I respect people that are doing this amazing thing to keep people safe. But there's a lot of people that don't take that responsibility seriously or that do fuck up. And you shouldn't just, those people don't just get respect because, because they're a politician or because they wear a badge or whatever, or because they wear a funny hat. Like, you know, you should respect humans, other people on the planet, because they do something to earn that respect, not just because they have a title or whatever, or got so many votes.
Sure. I want to steer this conversation more toward, because we've already been going for about an hour here.
Yeah.
More towards, so you have a podcast called Heavy Radio.
Yep.
And you are also what's your band?
Dark Mirror.
Dark Mirror. There you go.
So when I say, you know, I'm going to do something, we're going to campaign through the last vote, like, I just shift to that. And like my entire focus has been on doing, like, being as much. So I never thought I would be a politician. I don't have particular love for politicians. I have some people over the years that I've come to respect as like, hey, this person is trying so hard and I can't find, you know, like a huge ethical problem with this person. So they're cool. But otherwise, in general, you know, there's maybe like 3 of those people in Iowa, maybe like 3 in our national government that like are still alive or still at it. So it's rare, but it happens. So, you know, I've put the music on the back burner.
Sure.
And actually my co-host, he had his first baby. So we've kind of let him have bonding time. That's why we haven't had an episode since that Rob Sand episode, actually, when the state auditor came on. And, you know, it was just a coincidence that we had, you know, a Democrat on the show. Like, we invite, you know, if there was someone from any other party that was cool, you know, we'd have them. Like, it's a very music-based program. We got people from all walks of life. But yeah, that's Heavy Radio. We'll be back at it.
I'd love to come on, by the way.
2023. Yeah, we will do an episode.
Awesome.
And so we'll be hitting that hard again after he's had some time to bond with his little one.
Sure.
And,
well, and you're going to be getting off the road from doing all this political stuff. So they'll open up some time. Yeah.
And actually, my co-host is in the current lineup of the band, and
okay.
We sat next to each other in 5th grade, and we were trading Megadeth and Metallica and Dio and Ozzy records, like going way back. So like,
hell yeah.
We have pretty much like the framework of an album. We just need to, after he's had, you know, his kind of family bonding time, and I'm off the last vote gets counted. We'll shift gears back to getting this album out and getting the podcast rolling again.
Hell yeah. One last question about like libertarianism. Are you guys doing any kind of like event or party for the election? Well,
the big thing is next Saturday. It'll be the Saturday before the vote. We're kind of just all getting out as a crew and kind of spreading the word in neighborhoods, and then having a showing of V for Vendetta.
Okay. Actually
it's at Merle Hay Mall, I think, at Flick's Brewhouse.
Okay, so that's going to be after that. Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. So which is cool to have a party apparatus that is like trying to do something like that. That I think is something you lack as a independent in today's political landscape. Is like, it's nice to have, like, there are some positive things of having, you know, a party affiliation, but it definitely goes way too fucking far with, you know, any of the 2 largest parties, I think. You know, and there's even problem and conflict that arises in the smaller parties, like the Green Party and Libertarian Party have had their share of all kinds of shit we could get into, but it's like, I guess I'm optimistic about it just as a ideology and as a principle, that I don't get too worried about different sorts of infighting and shifts in leadership. Like, all that shit's gonna happen. And I think, you know, the general public will decide if this is like a good a good leadership that's doing a good job, and if this person is a good advocate for liberty, they'll it'll all work itself out, I think.
Hell yeah. It's kind of funny, talking about like party affiliation. So I'm named after my father. Me and my father have the same name, besides I'm a junior. He's a judge. So he actually got and I'm officially on the libertarian, registered as a libertarian. Mm-hmm. So somebody actually went up to him and asked him if he was a libertarian, which was pretty funny. He was just he told me, he was like, "Oh, well, that makes sense because someone just came up to me." I was telling him I was libertarian. He's like, "Oh, someone came up to me and did that."
Yeah, I think that happens. For me, I mean,
we seek each other out. We're like,
I would say my ma pretty much instilled me in the basic principles of libertarianism without being like registered as a libertarian or even necessarily knowing like that much about the party.
I see, just the core values,
which I think honestly a lot of cultures, like Italian, like Latino, and a lot of different cultures, I think are even indigenous culture, a lot of them, like, to me it aligns with the basic principles. Like, yeah, you get in trouble when you label something, and then there's hundreds of years of people that do problematic shit every once in a while, say something problematic, and they're labeled a libertarian, so then people are like, oh, that's what it's about. But like, just the basic idea of not hurting other people, not taking their shit, like, there's a lot of cultures that I think have that, like, liberty streak in them. It's just, how do you sell that to enough people that it makes a huge difference? And I think that's the challenge.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, no, as far, like, right now I'm so jealous because I have been just in the books, in the working, building relationships with legislature, with different people of different, fancy titles, and between that and working overtime as a correctional officer, like, I have friends just recently that I've seen, like the Misfits, seen King Diamond, seen Merciful Fate, and just all kinds of this epic shit, Queen Shrek and Judas Priest. Like, I am missing it so much because I would have gone to at least 2 out of 3 of those things if I could. And so, yeah, to me, definitely a music fan and a musician. Like, that's my core. I've been willing to make that sacrifice, to put that to the side until this election is over. And I don't have delusions like, oh, we're going to fucking kick everybody's ass, but we're going to do the very best we possibly can, and we're going to work as hard as we can until they count that last vote. And I hope people see that and respect that and kind of are inspired by that. That's our hope.
Exactly. No, I think that's something people need to recognize about the Libertarian parties. It's not going to be like a blowout. Like,
yeah, even if there comes a time where we, win more and more elections, like, it's probably going to be pretty fucking close. Mm-hmm. And I think that's partially because of that, like, people love feeling safe, even if it's just like an illusion or whatever.
Yeah.
There's always going to be that person that wants to promise you, like, we'll keep you safe and we'll give you all this shit. And they don't adequately explain that it's your own money they're using, it's people's money that they're using, that they took to give you whatever they think is going to help. But
yeah. Well, honestly, I think it's a good thing for there to be, separation of ideas, and like for races to be close,
for there to be competition.
Having an open exchange of ideas.
Yeah, totally. Honestly, I think where our country, one way we really went wrong is like to try to like censor and cancel and kill like communists and socialists. Like, I would rather have, this republic where they have their ideas and I have mine, and we peacefully put these ideas to the test. Like, we did so much damage to, like, oh, you're a socialist and you're banned from Hollywood, or you're a communist and, you know, we need to go to your country and just fucking murder you, or you're a, you know, Muslim and we have to show you by force that there's a better way. And so I think we went horribly wrong, like, which I guess has made me more and more libertarian and or anarchist, in that I think that's a horrible way to try to change the world, and I think we're paying for it, and we'll pay for it for a long, long time.
Yeah. I mean, despite whatever, you know, whether you're the part of the Libertarian Party or not, like, that's a reality.
Even if okay, let's say Yi is just a fucking Nazi, and he comes out and he's wearing the patches and the uniform.
That would be hilarious, by the way.
I would rather he still has a microphone, he still has a platform, and we still hash it out mano a mano. Like, let's talk. Yeah, exactly. I don't even. Now, like, it's just so hard to tell what's reality and what's not. Like, someone said he wanted to call his album Hitler, and I'm like, I don't fucking know. But even if he did, like, there's, like, let's talk and let's learn from each other, and let him just fall on his face. And we don't. I think there's a much better way than just trying to censor people and deplatform people. Like,
yeah. Well, Kanye
or ideas, you know, even like, I don't think socialism is like this thing we need to fear and we need to kill people over. I think if our ideas are so good and liberty is so good and competition is so good, we need to let there be competition between ideas, even if those are ideas we don't like socialism and communism and whatever ism you want to throw out there. Like, you can't just win over everybody. Like, you're not going to win over people that love democratic socialism by, you know, owning them on Twitter or, like, deplatforming them because you don't like them. It's the same way as, like, you're not going to win over the alt-right or the mega crowd by, like, making it so they don't have a space or don't have a voice. Like, you're only going to win these hearts and minds by, like, teaching them and learning, you know, giving them learning moments. And like, maybe, you know, you don't take someone out of a cult by, like, isolating them. Like, I think it's actually quite the opposite, like, showing them that, like, letting them learn from themselves that, hey, maybe this was really fucked up, and, you know, I'm amazed that I got sucked into this, but I don't think that's the way. Like, censorship and deplatforming and canceling is, like, some people's heart might be in the right place, but it's not, like, it's making society better.
Yeah, it's not a good
You're
solution.
not winning people to, like, now they're going to go and vote for the person you like because you did that.
Yeah. Like, you know, like with Trump, like, I truly believe that Trump wasn't the problem. He was the result of the problem.
And I always thought the best thing you could do is, like, let him talk and let him
just make a fool of himself.
Yeah, let
For
him.
real.
Don't ban him from Twitter. Like, let him talk to people, because even his own crowd, like, soon enough will be like, what the fuck is this dude fucking talking about?
he threw all the January 6th people under the bus. The next day he was like, yeah, we totally.
I think by now, actually, if there wasn't all this, like, movement to take away his voice, I think it might actually be a phenomenon that has passed by now. Like, his own worshippers would have turned against him to a greater extent by now if we allowed it to happen. But by the simple fact of, like, feeding into it, like, oh, you aren't letting him communicate on Twitter, and, you know, you're never giving him a chance, like, that just, like, makes it like this excuse that they just give him a pass for everything, like every fuck up and every cringy thing he says. Like, well, we have all this ammunition of like, you took him off social media, or you just run all these like negative pieces about him. And like, I think, people are especially if you're trying to be a politician, like you're your own, you can be your own worst enemy. Like, you will say something eventually that if you're not in it for the right reasons, you're gonna fuck up and fall eventually. And I think we're just making that process a lot slower when we try to like, limit people's speech and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me ask you, not really even controversial for libertarians, but like, do you think the 2020 election was stolen or rigged in any way?
I think that really every election is.
Yeah. I mean, that's the basic answer.
And so the fact that more people are hip to that, like, look a little further than last election. Like, look at every election. JFK is one of our most popular presidents of all time. And his election was like his father, paid mafiosos to like rig the election for him. And there was a lot of legitimate election rigging going on in the JFK election. And, it's only gone downhill from there. And so, yeah, I think once, you have two parties that pretty much are owned by all sorts of large corporations, and I honestly think there's a lot of what we call like the elite, or just some of the 1-2% that don't really give a fuck who wins, as long as it's a Democrat or a Republican that they have some level of control over. So I think the fact that we don't have, these free and fair elections, that is the rigging. That you can't just be like, hey, this is a guy that thought he could do better than the other people, and he decides to run, and he doesn't have like the same shot as like someone that's an establishment Democrat or Republican. I think that is the election rigging and the extent of election rigging. Like, you basically have to be like the George Carlin, like, big club. You have to be a member of it.
Yeah.
And then it's rigged in your favor. But I don't think it's like, I don't think it was like straight up, we just took votes from the Democrat and gave them to the Republican. Like, I don't think it was rigged on that level, personally. I think it's a bigger picture than that, a much bigger picture than that.
I agree. I don't think it was necessarily like,
I just can't imagine, like, there's the people that have the most power, I think, would have been just as happy with Trump or Clinton, just as happy with Trump or Biden. Like, there's just not, if you look at thousands of different issues, there's not enough difference for, I think, it to be even worth like trying to break this little rigged game that they have of elections, like, just because they like one of those two better than the other. Like, I just don't buy it that I don't think it was rigged on the level that like, that mule guy documentary filmmaker says it was. Like,
or like, ballots were excuse me, like that ballots were getting fucked with or whatever. I don't necessarily agree with that either. I do think,
I'm sure some percentage of votes and ballots get fucked with every election, but I'm also fairly certain that it swings like both ways, and a lot of them cancel each other out.
Exactly.
I don't think it's just a Democrat problem or just a Republican problem. I think we should strive to do better and have, but to me, a freer and fairer election means like, probably like using technology, which a lot of, Democrats and Republicans are afraid of, like to use like blockchain technology to have secure voting, and things like having like open primaries so independents can participate, and not forcing people to register as Democrat or Republican if they want a caucus or primary. like that really skews things, and that's a barrier for sure. And not having like these hoops that people have to jump through if they're independent or not Democrat or not Republican, things like that, I think would be passed to better elections. Ranked choice voting, I personally support. I think it'd be an improvement, not like a be-all, end-all, but it would be better. So yeah, things like that, not having forums or debate or polling that has like all the people on the ballot, making it harder for non-Democrats, non-Republicans to get on the ballot. Like, that's the election rigging. Not like, hey, we just went over and turned all your Trump votes to Biden votes, or all your Clinton votes to Trump votes, or your Al Gore vote. Like, okay, that was a different situation where it seemed like there was a lot of evidence that, W. Bush was, just another problematic election out of a long history of problematic elections.
Well, I think when it comes to like, pointing out the corruption in the election, a lot more of it has to do with like the media control. Like, every social media platform, every news platform, like, obviously,
basically, if they're telling everybody that, from the get-go that this is like one of two peoples to win out of like, hundreds of thousands to billions of people, depending on what election it is, like, yeah, that's a problem. You're basically rigging it and framing it the way that you want to frame it from the starting gun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it wouldn't be inaccurate to say elections are fraudulent or rigged, but it's a lot bigger picture, a lot more things that need covered than just like,
it's more nuanced.
Oh, those machines turn the votes from one to the other.
Yeah.
Like, I think the powers that be were perfectly content with like, Trump or Clinton or Trump or Biden.
No, I'm convinced they're on the same team, for sure. They answer to the same masters,
and are still like touting this whole narrative of at least one of the two larger parties are like the answer to everything, to all our problems for a certain percentage of the population.
Exactly.
So they're not really a threat to any of the powers that be. And I think if they were, they'd be treated a whole lot differently.
I agree, man. Well, hey, I think this is a good sentiment to end this episode on. We've been going for almost an hour and a half here. Obviously, we have the election coming up November 7th, I believe.
Tuesday the 8th.
Or the 8th, yep. Sorry. The episode with Rick drops 7th.
You can vote at your auditor's office right now. And actually, it's a thing a lot of people don't understand is like even like the window to vote absentee is already passed. So there's probably a sizable percentage that's already voted, but if we could motivate enough people to go and want to break the duopoly, even getting 4 or 5% of the vote will do that. So that's the low bar, and yeah, we feel pretty confident about that. But we'll keep working to do as good as we can until the last person puts their vote in.
Hell yeah. Marco, it's been a fucking pleasure, man. As always, it's great to have you on. Everybody, cheers. Go vote Libertarian on November 8th. Let's fucking shake this shit. Let's get it going. Hell yeah. And we'll put all your links in the description. We're here every Monday and Tuesday, Monday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Go check out our Patreon if you want exclusive content. All that. All right. Peace, everybody. Have a good night.